Today, we're taking a deeper look into grassroots basketball, recruiting, player development, rankings, exposure, and where the AAU game is stands today. Our guest has spent years evaluating talent across the country. He has worked with Made Hoops. He's worked on the PUMA Pro 16 and Next Pro circuits, and now he continues to work as an independent basketball scout. He has watched prospects at every stage, from young players trying to make a name for themselves to nationally recognized players, recruits preparing for college basketball. Joining us today is Pablo Cong Jr. Pablo, welcome to the Pure Prospects podcast. Man, I appreciate you taking the time to join us.
I appreciate you having me on, Cody. Thank you so much for this interview, bro.
Before we get into everything happening in AAU today, man, introduce yourself to our audience. Who is Pablo Cong Jr. and how did your journey in basketball begin?
Yeah, so Pablo Cong, born in New York City. Obviously, being born in New York City, you're going to play basketball. That's just what happens. You know what I mean? I spent almost 23 years in the Army. Left New York, spent 23 years, almost 23 years in the Army, did my thing. Nine separate combat deployments. And I just, overall, I just always been a basketball guy, man. And my mentor is the one who really got me into the scouting piece. But I've always played basketball or either coached it. So I coached high school basketball as well in California for about 5 years. And after that, like I said, I got out the army, coached basketball, joined the army again, retired, and now I'm just doing the scouting thing.
So you said you played basketball growing up. Um,
Yeah.
did you play collegiately, or did you just play high school or middle school?
So I played 1 year of JUCO basketball in California. I like, I think at some point you get to the realization that you're not gonna, everybody wants to go to the NBA, right? And I just figured out it just wasn't gonna happen for me. You know what I mean? I was 5'11", and it wasn't because of my height or anything. I just don't think, I don't think I was just don't think I was good enough, and so I just had to pivot, and that's when I ended up joining the military or whatever. So, yeah, I played high school, played that year at JUCO ball, and I just figured it was time for a change.
So you're independent scout now. Were you always interested in evaluating guys, players?
No, actually, I never was interested in evaluating players. I always watched basketball just for the entertainment and for the sport of it because I love the game. And like I said, I got into it through my mentor. He kind of, because I coached with my mentor who got me into scouting. I coached with him, and he actually was my basketball coach when I was about 13 years old. So I've known him like pretty much my whole life, and he uh he just kind of got me into it, man. I never thought I'd be evaluating talent because I used to think it was stupid. You know what I mean? I'm like, okay, if a player is good, everybody will see that he's good. But it's so much more into it nowadays that it's fun. It's actually fun now, and I get a real kick out of it.
Was scouting something you planned to do, or did you fall into it naturally?
Yeah, I think it was a natural, kind of a natural progression because, like I said, I've done it for like the last 9 years. And being in the military at the time is when I started to do it. And I couldn't travel a lot, because I had, military obligation to fulfill. So I couldn't travel a lot. So I just stayed as local as possible. And, I ended up, uh, once I got out, I really, full fledged with it, and that's when I had most of my time. So it kind of was a natural thing to just say, okay, now I got time after my retirement from the army, and I was just like, let me just do this full time.
Who gave you your first opportunity, in the scouting industry, or did you just kick it on your own just to begin?
So I started on my own. I started, like I said, I started with my mentor. My mentor, he's a big time scout. He does some stuff in the NBA and in college and in high school. And I started with him. He's the one who like actually, like I said, introduced me to it and kind of like gave me the opportunity. But as far as like industry wise, I started out with Puma in 2023. Yeah, 2023. Yeah, 2023 is when I started with Puma. They gave me a chance, Matt Reynolds and those guys over there. So I'm very thankful for that opportunity. So I did that for 2 years over there, and then I moved over to the Made Hoop side.
Man, scouting is one of those jobs that everybody sees from the outside, but they don't understand how much work it goes into it. What had attracted you to scouting instead of training, coaching, or working in another area of basketball?
So I did the coaching side, and that just took it, and that takes a ton of work or whatever. And it's not that I'm afraid of work or anything, but I thought I personally thought that scouting would be the easiest way. And boy, was I wrong. But you know what I mean. It just seemed, like I said, it just seemed like it would just be the easier path and more natural path to take once I had the time to do it. So I started doing that, and I realized, like I said, it's a lot more to it than I thought it was.
Do you remember your first event? Were you officially responsible for evaluating guys?
Yeah, yeah, I do remember my first event. I was stationed in Hawaii at the time, actually, and I was checking out players out there in Hawaii. The basketball scene isn't that good in Hawaii, so I had a guy who I was real close to who played on the Under Armour circuit. So I ended up going from Hawaii to New York. I'm from New York, so it was home, so it was an easy move or whatever. So I got on a plane, 12 hour straight flight to New York from Hawaii, and I was just looking at guys on the Under Armour circuit, and it was actually that year. It was who were the good guys? Um, damn, what's his name? Nas Reed and those guys were it was that class. So that's when I started, like, looking at players and like really started taking it serious, and saw like elite players for myself. So yeah.
What was that experience like?
It was it was different. It was different. It was cool because, like I said, looking at basketball from a evaluation lens instead of just a entertainment and just a fan lens is totally different. So it was cool. I had fun. It was a little difficult because I mean, I caught I had to catch myself a few times because I'm watching the game and I'm forgetting that I'm scouting the game, and I'm enjoying the basketball. You know what I mean? So I had to lock in, and I had to really understand what I was doing.
Were you confident in your evals, at that point, or did you, leave realizing that you still had much more like to do to learn?
I was confident in my evals, but I also did understand that I had a lot to learn. You know what I mean? Like, cause I saw, like my mentor gave me like a template of how he does his thing or whatever, and I'm kind of stubborn, so I was like, I got this. You know what I mean? Like, I don't need a template. You know what I mean? Type thing. And I realized real quick that why he goes by a template and why he does what he does. So I had to really swallow my pride a little bit, and uh, just understand that it's a way to do things, and to remain professional and everything. So yeah, I think my evals were really spot on and really good, but I also, like I said, I also learned it was so much more than just saying, oh yeah, that guy's quick, or he can jump, he has a nice jump shot, he can handle the ball. You know what I'm saying? There's so much more.
Yeah, it's everybody thinks, or I tell everybody, I think everybody can point out what players do well, right? Like
Yeah,
that
sure.
that that's what makes scouting so different, or people see it from the outside, but you're really not looking for what they do well, but you have to look at what they do well and what level. So
Yeah.
how difficult do you think it is to build credibility as a basketball scout?
I think it is difficult because I think it's one of those professions and industries that, pretty much anybody could jump in the game and to say, "Hey, I'm a scout." You know what I mean? So it is difficult, but I found that, like I said, as long as you stay consistent, you'll be fine. You just stay consistent in what you're doing and believe in yourself, and believe in your evals, you'll be fine. Because at the end of the day, you're trying to project and do certain things, and trying to and if you're doing it for the right reason, you'll be good. And you got to be able to know and understand that people are going to be upset at you sometimes, and some people aren't going to agree with the eval or whatever. Just stick to your guns. That's what I do.
Yeah, so there are a lot of people that post rankings online, but what separates someone that truly understands the game from someone who's just watching the highlights?
um So I would say, like, as far as rankings go, I think rankings are subjective. So it's like, it's one of those things that it just depends on that person. And so, like, a separator, and that is, because like, I'll say this, like, and I'm not trying to, talk bad about nobody or ruffle anybody's feathers, but a lot of times these guys that do the rankings and stuff, they haven't even seen all these kids. So it's like, how are you doing rankings and you haven't even seen all these kids? Because it's so much more than just going on Twitter or whatever the case, and then just breaking something down. Like, it's just so much more to it. You know what I mean? So yeah, that's one of the things, man. That I understand that rankings are completely subjective. I can put a rankings out right now, and somebody, I have millions of people that disagree with it. They'll tell me that Cody is better than Pablo in this, and this is the reason why, and that's fine. You know what I mean? So I don't take none of that stuff personal, man. I just do what I do.
Yeah, on the ranking side, like I don't think I've done rankings or I've been doing rankings. It seems like no one's happy no matter where they're at unless they're number one. And uh,
Oh, for
like
sure.
you said, they're subjective, and you can't see all the kids. And I'm not trying to ruffle anybody's feathers, but I think some of it's just a business decision. It's political. I mean, there's a lot of politics, around the game, but
Sure.
rankings, they're tough. But back to you. Were there veteran scouts, coaches, or basketball minds that taught you to look at the game differently than what you had been looking at it before?
Yeah, definitely. For sure. Because like, it's one of those things that, like, um, it depends on what level you're doing it for, or whatever the case may be. Because, like I said, I talked to college guys, like college coaches and stuff, and they ask me about a certain player, and I got to give a whole different eval than I would if I was just doing, like, a regular high school kid that's just still going to be in high school the next year or whatever. Because I'm thinking about, like, higher level, right? Like, so how's this player? Player X is, like, Cody is phenomenal in all these things, right? This what he doesn't do well or whatever. But, like, how does that fit in the scheme of, like, Gonzaga, Duke, or Kentucky? How does he fit with those guys? So it's like a different level of thinking that you gotta sometimes, you gotta, in your mind, you gotta switch it off, and you gotta just plug and play that player into the system that that the people are recruiting them into. So yeah.
So let's talk about your experience on Made Hoops and Puma. You previously worked for both of those. Let's start with Made
Hmm.
Hoops. What was your role, and what did you
Okay.
learn from evaluating the younger prospects in that environment?
Yeah, so yeah, no, I just was, like I said, just straight scout and written content guy. I would write a bunch of stuff on kids. Yeah, no, my experience was good. It was definitely good. I got to quite a few events there. But it was good, man. Like, they treated me well. Like I said, they were professional at all times. Um, and they let me do my thing. You know what I mean? They let me do my thing, and they didn't ask for, like, the world. You know what I mean? They just asked you to just do your job, and if, as long as you did your job, it was all good. And, like, it was my time mostly there was, like, evaluating, like, eighth grade and below. You know what I mean? Because the AU time wasn't in that at that time. But yeah, no, it was good, man. It was good. I had a good time. It is a little more difficult evaluating talent that's eighth grade and below, because so many different things come go with it. You know what I mean? So many different variables, and it's just a lot of different things that happen, man, with kids that young. 'Cause sometimes I'll be watching, like, I was watching games that was like sixth graders, and I'm just like, what can I say about a sixth grader? So I had to think outside the box a lot of the time, and really put some stuff together. That actually made sense. Not just say that the kid could shoot, or he's this, he's that. You had to really break it down to like a development type of what I mean, scouting report type thing. Is more so like where does he project to be, or like this is what he does well now. Is how's that going to hold over, and for next year, or with against better competition. He's athletic right now. He's bigger than everybody right here in the sixth grade. But once he goes to the eighth grade or ninth grade, everybody is kind of going to even out. So it's like, what's that kid going to do there? So you had to kind of think outside the box.
Yeah, when kids that age,
Yeah.
like most of the time, it seems like the kids that have grown faster than the others are going to be better because they're more physically developed. And then, like you said,
Oh, for sure.
a couple years later, when everybody catches up physically, like you have to look at, like, I guess their skills more compared to their size, but that's kind of hard to do at that level, right?
It
And
is.
Made hoops, provide often provides that early look at those kids. Like, and you kind of talked about, evaluating those middle school players, like, and still growing physically and emotionally. Like, how
Yeah.
really difficult was that for you? Like, when you're as your first gig.
Yeah. So I think just like us, like you said, you know what I mean. I think that's the bigger part of it all. You know what I mean. It's like the emotional part of it too. You know what I mean. You'll see kids, that have a meltdown or outburst or whatever, and you got to understand that they're 12. You know what I mean. 13 years old. That type of thing is going to happen, and so like, how's that going to project for later? Is that going to be a problem later? Things like that. And so I had to take all that stuff into account, and I had to show grace. I really had to show grace because it's like, sometimes, you would see some crazy stuff, and sometimes it was just all good. For the most part, I didn't really see nothing like insane. You know what I mean? But dealing with young kids, you're gonna see some stuff that's just like, crazy. But overall, it was, like I said, it was a great experience, man. I appreciate all my time there, and them allowing me to do that and do my thing on that circuit. So I appreciate it.
You also spent time evaluating on the Puma Pro 16 and Next Pro circuits. What made those
Yeah.
events and circuits different from the other grassroots platforms?
I think the difference is, like Next Pro, they have a lot more team. They have a lot of teams, so you are like you're busy. You know what I mean? You're real busy. You know what I mean? And you're trying to see as many kids as possible, and you're trying to spread the love around. You know what I mean? Like, not just be focused on one team or one kid. You're trying to go to different games, and sometimes, man, I was going to, you know 20, 30 games, you know what I'm saying, in a day. You know what I mean? Because I'd be in the gym from 8 in the morning to like 9 at night. And I'm going to games pretty much every 15 minutes. Like, I'll watch, a quarter of a kid or of a team, then go to another game. And so in the span of an hour, I've watched 4 games, so it's one of those things that it was good though, man. But it taught you, I would say, my time there, it taught you how to be organized. It taught you how to really be organized, because you really had to organize like your notes and everything, man. Because if not, so many kids there, you would just get lost. You'd get lost. You'd be like, damn, who was that kid again? What team was that again? What was his number again? You know what I mean? And you find yourself doing a lot of that. And I learned that early. So I kind of, I would do the legwork ahead of time, and I would, organize everything prior to. So when I get to the gym, it's just like it was kind of straightforward for me.
So you would get the schedule and pretty much, well, that's kind of what I did. So you get your schedule and you kind of focus on certain games, like lock in, circle, and try to hit those games. But did Puma like have you do certain games for certain players, or did you have like full roam of or full reign of like whoever wherever you wanted to go and what players you wanted to scout?
So at one point, they would tell you, hey, they would tell you certain courts to go to, and then it just got to the point to where it was like, okay, that didn't really make sense. So, I'm gonna do my thing. You know what I mean? Because I don't feel like the essence of scouting is not like, you know, somebody telling you where to be. It was more so of, you just going out there and finding the talent, because you could tell, I could tell Cody, hey, go to court 12, stay on court 12 to 3 p.m., you know what I mean? And hope you find somebody, you know what I mean? Nah, it's not, I don't feel like that's, a good model at all. I feel like, let that person do their thing, especially if they have a proven track record of, being able to evaluate pretty good or find talent. It's like you should just let them do their thing. So that's what I would do. Like I said, it started out as kind of like, hey, you guys, we want you to be this right here. And then it was just like, nah, what I mean, that's not going to work. So we just went and just did our own thing, man.
Yeah, it seems like in the beginning you were kind of micromanaged, but they finally like let you do your job because you're the one with the eye to see the kids that you
Yeah.
think can play. Can you kind of talk about the difference between the Pro 16 and the next Pro, like the level of competition?
Yeah, so the difference is, so the Pro 16 isn't the more the sponsored teams, I mean, the next pro teams are, it's kind of like the A and the B side of the things or whatever. But just from being there for 2 years or whatever, I found that there's some really, really, really good next pro teams, man. And it's a lot of talent on the next pro circuit. So it's kind of one of those things where you had to work up to being uh like a Pro 16 team. So you basically had to pay your dues. You know what I'm saying? Not pay, but like you had to really like you had to win games. You know what I mean? If you won it out, if you won everything out, you know what I mean, you get bumped up to the Pro 16 automatically. Unless you had somebody that on your team that was like ranked or something, then you probably would get bumped up sooner than that. But other than that, it's just it was just it's good. Like man, it's like I said, the next pro has a lot of teams, but it's a lot of talent, man. And it was a great time, man. I really really enjoyed my time there. Really enjoyed my time there. It was really fun. It was organized. They run a tight ship there, which is good because I think when you have so much going on, you do have to kind of you know, be organized and run things the right way. But yeah, no, the next pro and the Pro 16 is like phenomenal circuit, phenomenal place to play. So don't, kids, parents, don't let anybody tell you anything different. You know what I mean? Like it's a great place to play.
So you've got to scout the EYBL, the 3SSB, Under Armour. How important do you think Puma, like the next pro circuit, is compared to like those circuits for certain kids? Like it's just as important as the other ones, correct?
Yeah. I don't think it's no difference at all. You know what I mean? They all have talent. They all get the gym filled with coaches. It's no difference. You know what I'm saying? I think it's just personal preference. You know what I mean? And I don't have like a personal preference. That's why I go to all the circuits. You know what I mean? Like it's no personal preference for me. It's more so like if you have an opportunity, just take full charge of that opportunity, man, and do the best you can. So I don't, a lot of people, they want to do the comparison and things like that, but I don't worry about all that, man. Because if you could hoop, you could hoop. You know what I'm saying? You could hoop anywhere. You know what I'm saying? So it really doesn't matter.
What was something you learned with your time with Made Hoops and Puma that still influences the way you evaluate today?
I learned that, I feel like you don't need to watch a player 3 and 4 times to come up with a good evaluation. I know what I normally do. I normally watch a kid one time. I do my evaluation. And the next times I see them, it's just really so just not even me confirming anything. It's just me just being a fan. You know what I mean? At that point, like really just getting to enjoy them, watching them play basketball because I feel like I can the more you watch a kid, I feel like you start to be a little bit more judgmental about things, and you start to pick things apart a little bit too much, because if you trust your eyes, the first time you see a kid, that's what it is. You know what I mean? You don't need to keep watching them, keep watching them, keep watching them. If I'm watching a kid more than once, it's because I'm more of a fan, I'm saying, than anything, and I want to see them play. You know what I'm saying? I want to put the pad aside, put the notes aside, and let me watch this kid play. You know what I'm saying? And if there's something that that sticks out that I didn't catch the first time, I'll jot it down. But like for the most part, man, I watch them one time and I know what it is. You know, I try, like I say, I trust. I tell people all the time, I trust my eyes. So yeah.
So let's talk about the scouting process. Take us through your scouting process when you walk into a gym before you sit down and evaluate a game. What are you looking before the ball even tips off?
So what I do is, like I said, I come organized already. I already have everything in my phone. If I don't have a notepad, I have the stuff in my phone already, and all I gotta do is jot down name, number, and just the notes, right? So I do that. And when I go in the gym and I go to watch a specific player, I want to see the warm ups. You know what I mean? I want to see what they doing in warm ups. I want to see how serious they take the warm ups. If they actually are warming up or if they just going through the motion. You know what I mean? Because a lot of kids, man, what they do is they go in the gym and then layup line, they got their cool jacket on. Everybody want to be cool. They want to do the cool layups, the cool moves, the cool dunks. None of that is, what I'm saying, is what they're going to do in the game. You know what I mean? So I want to see if the kid is taking it serious and, working on stuff that he's actually going to do in the game, or really trying to get his muscles loose or whatever the case may be. So I'm really paying attention to that kind of stuff, and I'm just looking at like, you know, what else are they doing? You know what I mean? Like in the warm ups, or like talking to the coach or whatever the case may be, talking to their parent on the sideline. What's the message? You know what I mean? What's the picture that they're trying to paint, or what's the message that they're trying to convey? you know what I mean, through body language or through, just vocal, just talking to their teammates, talking to the coaches or whatever. I just like to just like the total player concept, man. I like to see everything that they doing. Some guys, do ridiculous shit like or stuff, excuse my language, like, change shoes in the warm up line or switch shirts and switch jerseys, don't have they, have a jersey around their neck, don't even have the jersey all the way on, what I mean? Just things like that, man. So I'm looking at stuff like that to see, just for my own, what I'm saying, thing. Like I won't normally judge a kid's character by that because I'm not here to do that. But, I just take those little mental notes, man, to see that maybe later on when they go to college or something, it is something that carried over. This something that got them in trouble with their coach or whatever. So I'm just looking at stuff like that.
So once the game finally starts, what's the first thing you evaluate on a player?
So for me, I like to see, how they kind of process the game. I'd like to like evaluate like IQ. You know what I mean? IQ. I know everybody goes right to scoring and what they do this and what they do that and all that stuff, but I like to see IQ and just team play. Like what kind of teammate are they? Do they play team basketball? Do they understand the game? Do they understand what the offense that they're running? Are they messing it up when they're running offense? Do they understand their offense? Just different things like that. What's their feel like? You know what I mean? Are they pitching the ball ahead? With point guards, with the big men, what's his footwork like? How's he running the floor? Is he, burying his man down under the basket and sealing them and holding the seal or whatever, just things like that.
As a scout, like, is it how quickly can you tell if a player has knows the game beyond scoring, like their IQ?
You can tell pretty fast, man. You can
Yeah.
tell pretty fast. You know what I mean? You can tell pretty fast by certain type of plays they make. Just different things, man. One of the funniest things is I remember watching uh Beckham Black, just to name a player. I remember watching Beckham Black 2 years ago, and I knew just from the way he made a play, and it had nothing to do with like him scoring and shooting the ball, just from him like catching the ball on the fly and like going around the guy. I knew that his processing and his thinking and his IQ and feel was like just ahead of everybody's, and he ended up making a pass that was next. It was like a third level pass, breaking down the defense, seeing what the back line was doing, manipulated the back line of defense, kicked it over to the corner, open 3-pointer. You know what I mean? So it was one of those things that I was like, he understands the game. You know what I mean? Like he's not only just playing and not only naturally gifted and talented, but he understands, how to move the backline defense, and he understands that that's where, what I mean, a lot of the game is played. If you can manipulate that back line, you can get your teammates a lot of, some open shots. And he was doing that at a young age, and I was really impressed by him. So it's things like that, man, that plays like that it's hard, it's kind of hard to describe. Like what I'm saying, when you know when a player has it, when a player understands like exactly how to play the position or how to play basketball. You kind of just feel it.
Yeah, like with they make the extra pass, like the way they set screens, the
Yeah,
rotations. Like I like when
sure.
a guy like helps a teammate kind of get organized, like cutting without the ball, boxing out. Or the biggest thing I like seeing is talking defensively. Like I really love seeing
Yeah,
that. Yeah, things like that.
sure.
How much do you evaluate a player when the ball ends in their hands?
I do that a lot too, so that's something that I'm big on. Is off ball. What I'm saying, off ball player stuff. Like I said, I try to evaluate it all. I try to cover every basis I can, because a lot of times what people need to understand is that like this is high school basketball, right? We're talking about high school, just solely high school, right? In high school basketball, you might be the man, but you go to the next level, you might be playing off the ball, and what you're doing off the ball is gonna matter. You know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, like what is he doing right now in high school level off the ball? Okay, is he like actually engaged? Like, does he actually want to be there because he doesn't have the ball or whatever? So I'm actually evaluating that a lot. That's a big part of the evaluation is what he does off the ball.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of kids, when they have the ball in their hand, like they know what to do. But if they don't have the rock in their hand, man, they seem like they're out in no man's land. And just like you said,
Yeah,
when you go to college, like you're not going to be the guy that's going to get 20 shots. So you got to learn to play the game
yeah,
without the basketball. Um,
yeah, for sure.
what do you look at when you look at body language?
So, like I said, I'm just looking at like just see what they do when things aren't going their way. You know what I mean? Mostly, you know what I'm saying? I like to see what they do when their team is down or when they create, when they make a turnover or when they miss a shot. You know what I mean? How hard are they on themselves? Like, a teammate turns the ball over. Are they barking at their teammate? Like what's going on there? So that's a lot of the body language stuff that'll generally tell you a lot about a kid or a player, and it can kind of translate to either good or bad, like I said. So a lot of the body language stuff, I think that's one of the most underrated things that kids need to understand, that that stuff is noticeable. You know what I mean? A lot of players, they think that, you know what I mean, when they doing little things like rolling their eyes or whatever, or just little subtle things that nobody's not watching. There's people watching, and if I'm watching, just imagine what the coach thinks. You know what I'm saying? If I'm thinking negatively, you know what I'm saying, and I don't have nothing to offer you other than an evaluation, you know what I mean? Like the coach has the actual scholarship offer to offer you, you know what I mean? So if I'm thinking negatively, what do you think the coach is thinking? So yeah.
Can poor body language completely change your opinion on a player?
Um, yes. I think it just depends on it really can. It really can, it because a lot of these kids, man, are so talented and so good, they just don't play hard. You know what I mean? And you see, if you could tell, that's one of the biggest indicators, you know what I'm saying, is their body language, to see if a kid plays hard or not. And some kids only play hard when they have the ball in their hands. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, it can change an evaluation for sure, because it's like, but I won't, like I said, if talking to colleges and stuff, I won't generally, I will never like be like, oh yeah, you don't want to take him because he got bad body language. No, you know what I mean? I think that's for the coaching staff to figure out, you know what I mean? And maybe they can, spark a flame under their tail and get them to do, the things that they want them to do. So that's not my role right there. But I definitely think that it can change an evaluation for sure.
What do you look for when a player is taken out of the game or corrected by a coach?
I just want to see like how receptive they are to criticism, constructive criticism, and what I mean, how receptive they are to, being taken out of the game. Like when you're taken out of the game, like what do you feel about that? Like, do you get mad? Do you get upset? Most players get mad and upset, right? And it's one of two things. Players that get mad because they feel like they don't want to come out, so it's kind of an act of selfishness. And some players get mad because they feel like, you know, they still got more in the tank and they want to, what I mean, they want to go longer, you know what I mean? And sometimes you getting taken out because the coach is trying to protect you, or he sees that you're tired or whatever. So I try to, I try to talk to kids about that too, man, because that's a body language thing too. And I feel like, if you got bad body language, man, that sometimes that could speak volumes.
Yeah, when you're getting corrected by the coach, you're talking about constructive criticism. I think that's a
Yeah.
coachable thing. I think that's a coachable thing. Can you tell when a player is
So
coachable? Can you tell if a player is coachable by just watching one game?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. Like I said, like, and for me, and I'm not like some phenomenal, like I'm the only one that does this, like I'm not like bragging or anything, but I think you can get a complete evaluation on a kid, you know what I mean, watching them one time for sure. And that's top to bottom, you know what I mean? Attributes, IQ, pace, feel, knowledge. You can tell, the athletic body or whatever, or, what I mean, physical attributes. You can see, on off court stuff. You can do all that stuff in one evaluation setting. It's just a matter of, how much are you paying attention. So yeah, no, I definitely think you can.
How much weight do you like put on a great performance or like a great game versus a bad one?
I think you got to take into account, you know, who the player is, maybe who they're playing. You know what I mean? Like, because if they're playing like a team that's just not that good or whatever, then it should look, like you're dominating or whatever the case may be. Um, I think, just man. it's just like competition. I think competition definitely rings to that, because if you're playing against a player that's just as good as you, how hard are you playing? Are you trying to kill that player or whatever the case may be? So it's one of those things, man, where I think, like I said, if you're like these kids in the top five or whatever, they should dominate high school. You know what I mean? Because they're just athletically, and just naturally more gifted than a lot of players that they're playing. So they should dominate. But sometimes you don't see that. So you got to wonder, what else is going on with that. So yeah.
So let's talk about current production and long-term potential or upside. One of the hardest parts of scouting is separating a player where they are today to where they could become 3 or 4 years from now. How do you balance current production with long-term potential or upside?
Yeah. So I think, it's all about the work. You know what I mean? Like, because upside doesn't mean anything if they don't work hard. You know what I'm saying? Because at a certain point, you have to develop. You know what I mean? And I feel like if you are working on the things that need to be developed, you're gonna get better. You know what I mean? That upside will be reached. But I think a lot of players, they don't reach their upside because they don't work hard. So balancing that, man, is tough, man, especially as an evaluator, because like you just don't know how good. I don't know how good Cody will be, if Cody shoots 3,000 shots a day. But I figure, I mean, naturally, if you think naturally, you would think that the jump shot is going to come along at some point if you're shooting 3,000 jumpers a day. You know what I mean? But how does it translate to a game where everything is faster? How does it translate to a game where you're shooting it when you're tired? How does it translate to a game when, defense is actually on you? You know what I mean? So you got to take all those things into account. And, you like I said, you just don't know, man. Like upside is one of those things where it's like, man, it's the biggest question mark, man. It's a question mark, but like I said, you could just tell current, by projection, they should be better if they work hard at those things. So you kind of just got to go by that, man, and just kind of, you know, and that's one of the things when I talk to kids and parents, man, I really tell them, you know what I mean, like. Like, yeah, your kid is talented as hell, you know what I'm saying? But that ain't gonna mean anything. You know what I'm saying? If this kid doesn't reach his potential, if he doesn't work hard, if he wants to just go, you know, drink all day or whatever, you know what I mean? Like being naturally talented is gonna because at the next level, a lot of stuff is gonna even out anyway. You know what I mean? It doesn't matter that I got a 50-inch vertical because when I go to play at Duke or something like that, it's probably five other people with a 50-inch vertical. You know what I mean? They just work harder than me. You know what I mean? So that 50-inch vertical, it doesn't mean anything. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be sitting right on the
Yeah.
bench with everybody else that don't work hard.
So yeah, like it's all about what translates to the next level, and I think it's about being
For sure.
more efficient. It has to be about being more efficient on the floor. Would you rather evaluate a player with like raw elite, like physical tools, or like a highly skilled player with average athleticism?
I don't have a preference in who I evaluate. I evaluate whoever, you know what I'm saying? And if he catches my eye, he or she catches my eye, I'll go with that. But, for the most part, I think there's a lot of upside in evaluating both.
So like we were talked about long term potential or upside. What does that term actually mean to you? Upside.
I think that's, I think upside is just where kind of see you, or where you're projected to be at, just based on what they see as far as your the tools you have now and what you can be and how you could what level you could reach. So upside is, I don't know, some of these words, man, I feel like some of these words are just words. It's like, man, how much does that stuff mean? I think I think they mean something, but at the same time, like I said, if you don't work hard, man, these words don't mean anything.
Yeah, I mean it gets constantly used in scouting in the basketball world, but what traits do you think feel or believe a player has another level to reach? Like what traits do you see that like, oh man, that upside they could reach another level?
Um, just things like, like it just depends on the player. Like if it's a big guy, you know what I mean, a big guy who let's say like block shots. You know what I mean? Like I think, I think with guys who block shots, if they could get better at timing and footwork, things like that, strength. I think those are upside things that'll, that can help them, as they progress through the levels of basketball, whatever level that they're at, because you get some guys that jump for everything. You know what I mean? Like they jump at every pump fake or at every shot at the rim. But what that ends up happening is they end up giving up shots on the back end. You know what I mean? Because guys just pump fake them and get fouled and go to the line. They end up sitting down or they pump fake them. Those guys jump and they pass it. Somebody's open. You know what I mean? It's easy 2 points, easy 3 points. So I think with upside, man, with something like that, man, it's one of those things that it just depends on what part of the game you're talking about.
How important are physical tools like, I don't know, speed, strength, athleticism, and height?
Yeah. So I think if you just break it down, um, I mean, obviously all those things are important because the faster you are, it should help you. It should help you. Um, but I think with all those things that you named, I think you have to tie all that stuff in because it doesn't matter how fast you are, how strong you are, how tall you are. Because if you can't tie that in, right? Like as far as like the mental part of the game, if you can't tie it all in, then you're just a fast, strong, tall person, what I'm saying, out there on the court that's just, just doing whatever you're doing. But I think it just depends on, the person, the player, and the moment and the game team, it just all that stuff matters.
Can basketball IQ and skill overcome physical limitations for you?
Oh yeah, for sure, 100%. Look at guys like Steve Nash is a guy who I use an example a lot, right? So who's more faster, stronger, quicker, Steve Nash or Derrick Rose? Obviously Derrick Rose, right? But who's more skilled? Steve Nash. So, I mean, if you get, and that's why, shout out to my guys over there at CPSA, Team CPSA out of California, man. Like, Clint Parks and Cartier, French Tony, those guys, they develop, you know what I'm saying? And they develop guys who aren't that fast, quick, tall, and all those things. Guys like, like a guy like Joe Sterling, you know what I mean? He's at Texas now, you know what I mean? He'll be his freshman year at Texas this year, he should play and he should do well, but he never was fast, strong, jumping out the gym. But what he had was elite footwork, elite shooting, and he could think the game. You know what I mean? He was smart. So, that is it's all about development, man. If you can develop, I always say skills over athleticism, you know what I mean? Fundamentals over everything. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about it. So if you can develop those parts of your game, you'll generally be okay.
What are some skills or like examples of some skills that translate well into college basketball? Like shooting, decision making, passing, rebounding, defense,
Footwork,
positional size,
footwork.
versatility. Yeah, footwork's one for sure.
Definitely footwork. I would say footwork is a big thing, you know what I mean? And that's for guards and big men, you know what I mean? Because if you could get the footwork part down, what I'm saying, you might be okay. But, these are the parts of the game that nobody wants to work on because they're the most boring and they don't require you putting the ball in the basket. You know what I mean? They kind of just, it's just drills, it's footwork drills, it's just drills over and over and over again until it's beaten to your brain, until it becomes muscle memory, and then you incorporate doing it with the basketball. Then you incorporate doing it with the basketball and putting the basketball in the basket. And so, I mean, it's just the non sexy part of the game. And, people they don't teach that. They rather teach you, how to do 14 behind the back moves that you're never going to use in college basketball or high school basketball. So, yeah.
Yeah, I had a guest on, Wade Kramer. He decided to go to prep instead of go the JUCO route. And one of the questions I asked him about what's one thing he developed, and he talked about how being more efficient because doing three between the leg dribbles up the top is not working at the next level. He goes, I have to learn how to get to my spots more efficiently to score the basketball or just get to those spots instead of doing all the dribbling that I was doing. Developing things like that, just being more efficient, knowing how to get to your spots, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. For sure, and that's why I said, like, that's why I use Steve Nash as a perfect example, because he developed all that stuff, and he can get to the spots and get a shot off on anybody.
What are some things that some guys do well in AAU basketball that look really impressive but may not translate to the next level in college basketball?
Um, I would definitely say the dribbling piece. I mean, the dribbling piece, just kind of dribbling in a spot, or just things like that, man. That you gotta be able to pass the ball. You got to get the ball ahead. You got to advance the basketball. You have to. It's only gonna, what I mean, it's only gonna bode well for you. So I think that's a big part, man, is because everybody's teaching all these dribble things, what I'm saying, these dribble moves, and so players want to go out there and do that stuff, but it's like, and also the like the sidestep shooting and the step back jumpers and stuff is like, it's crazy. I mean, I'm seeing kids do that stuff so much, and I'm just like, man, that's not gonna work, man. You know what I'm saying? Especially because you're 6'1", and then you're gonna have a 6'8" wing with a 7'3" wingspan guarding you. So it's like, how you gonna get that off? You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think we got to do better in that area.
Like I guess one thing, an example I'd like to use is Steph Curry. Man, you don't see him dribble the ball much, do you? Like
No.
he catches and shoots. Man, he gets to those spots, and he's
Yeah.
not doing all those. He's not doing all that dribbling mess. Like he's catching the ball and scoring, or getting it ahead, or getting it to a teammate. Like yeah, all that dribbling is. I think it's just too much. But I mean, it looks great. Don't get me wrong. I think like one thing is over like rebounding the basketball. Like how solid of a rebounder you are. Like
Yeah.
you know, doing things like that. When you like, where do you look at when you evaluate a high volume score?
For me, I just I like to see, like, how are they getting their buckets? Like, what is their field goal attempts? How easy of shots are they getting? You know what I mean? What kind of shots are they taking? You know what I mean? Are they taking what the defense gives them? You know, are they making a lot harder on themselves? You know what I mean? By doing a lot of dribbling, or doing extra moves. A lot of wasted movement. Um, so I like to see, like, efficient scores. You know what I mean? And, like, how you doing it? Like, are you doing it from the 3-point line? Are you doing it from getting to the rim? Are you doing it from the free throw line? Like, how are you getting your points? Is like how I like to see it.
Yeah, I think it's more about efficiency instead of dominating the basketball, right?
For sure.
So let's talk about like projecting at the college level. Players and parents often, want to know what level a prospect can play at. How do you separate a high major prospect from mid major, low major, D3, D2, whatever? What separates a D1 prospect from a D2 prospect?
So I would say athleticism, speed, some of those things we talked about earlier, athleticism, speed, um, processing the game. Shooting is a big one. Shooting is huge. You know what I mean? Because if you could shoot, you could put in, and if you could shoot at an because there's not a lot of elite shooters. You know what I'm saying? You have some efficient shooters out there, but the game has changed so much, man. Is that a lot of these coaches, especially at the college level and the high major D1 level, and they all value size. You know what I mean? So, and a lot of people, we average American dudes. You know what I mean? We like regular height. 6-foot guys. So you got to be special, special to be like a high major and be that short. Be that small. So it's just one of those things, man. That you just have to find a skill, man, that really translates. And it's nothing. And the thing about it too, man, there's nothing wrong with playing, D2, D3. It's nothing wrong with that. You know what I mean? A scholarship is a scholarship. You know what I'm saying? If they're gonna pay for your school to go hoop, you know what I'm saying, then take it. You know what I mean? Because everybody wants to go D1, but at the end of the day, everybody can't play D1. And if that's for different reasons, like I said, athletic ability and just different things like that. Because there's a lot of players. There's so many players out there, man. So if you can't do something that can keep you at a D1 level, you need to get there. Then you need to be in the gym working on that. So it's hard to and a lot of people don't want to hear that, but a lot of people don't want to hear, you hear you tell their kid, I think you're a D2 kid or a D3 kid, because like with parents and different coaches, handlers, or whatever, they think that everybody's D1, but it's not. So I think the biggest separator at times is probably size, having a elite skill or a skill that they're efficient at, and something that they do really well, and just athletic ability, man. Like that could be a big separator.
Yeah, it's changed so much.
It has.
Man, at the D1 level, man, they really value the size and being a D1 athlete, and they're banking on being able to develop them in this and to work on their skills, right? So,
Hmm.
like back in the day, like you're saying, we're average 6 foot guys. In America, if you're a great shooter or whatever, you think you can play D1, but now like the coaches are valuing size and
Yeah,
athleticism over skills pretty much.
for
It's
sure.
certain positions. So, what do you think separates like a D1 prospect from the D3? I mean, I know we just talked about size and athleticism. Is there anything else that you look at between those levels?
Yeah, I would say efficiency for sure. For sure, efficiency. Because I know a guard who's playing at the D3 level right now. Um, he has a D1 body, and he can play D1. It's just a matter of his efficiency. He has to get more efficient at what he does. He shot at the level he was playing at. He shot his field goal percentage was bad. His 3 point percentage was okay, but he can play at a D1 level. It's just a matter of, like I said, he just got to clean some things up, and I think he'll get there. So it's just a matter of just efficiency, man. Efficiency and just being able to, do the things that you need to do. And everything isn't about offense either. You know what I mean? If you, sometimes it's about timing. Sometimes it's about role. You know what I'm saying? Like if you had a D3 school, right, and your role is a scorer, you might get D1 looks, but that's just to be a strictly a fundamental traditional point guard. You know what I'm saying? You never know. So you know what I mean? Those are some of the questions and some of the things you gotta ask these coaching staffs, man. Just like, as players and as parents and stuff, like, yeah, my kid did this. He was a scorer here. Well, what role do you project for him there? Because we know he could play D1. It's just a matter of, getting a chance. So
It's
yeah.
also about like I think you just hit on it, like what system the school,
Yeah,
plays offensive and defensive systems, right?
for sure.
Like, do you think too many players view anything below D1 as failure?
Yeah, yeah. I think we do. I think just as a culture, man, like in America, I think we do look at that as bad. You know what I mean? Because you always want to be at the top of the top, but people got to understand that like everybody can't go to the top. And everybody can't play at that level. So take what you could get, and not even take what you could get like it's in a negative. As that sounds negative, you know what I mean? It's not even that. It's just that like play at the level that you need to play on. You know what I mean? To make sure that you're successful, and then you'll be okay. But I think that's just one of the things that we do here in America, man. We look down upon on this stuff, but it's some good D3s and D2 schools, man. It's some good ones that'll probably give D1s a run for their money. So I think it's just all about researching too, man. And people just need to research, and we don't do that enough. We don't research enough.
Yeah, with I think you really have to love the game. It shows how much you love the game. If you don't make the D1 level, like if you don't want to do the D2, D3, or NAI, JUCO, like
Hmm.
like it shows how serious you are about the game. I think like
Yeah,
and
because it
and you
is a
can't
different
give up.
grind. It is a different grind at those lower levels. It is a different grind because you might not have the funding, you don't have the facilities, you don't have certain things that you would have at a D1 level. So you're right. It is about your passion and how much you love the game because you know going to a D3 as opposed to a high major like Kansas or something where you have everything you possibly need, but at a D3 you struggling with lunch. You know what I mean? Or say something like that, and it's like, how much do you love the game? How much are you willing to work for this? And sometimes, man, that's the separator right there because people aren't willing to work. They want everything handed to them. So,
Yeah, man, you're going to games in buses, you're
yeah.
eating snacks, you're not flying anywhere,
Hmm.
and you can go to that D3 and D2 school, and if you have that passion and you have that work ethic, you can develop
Yeah,
and make it to that D1 level.
for
That's what the
sure.
transfer portal is all about. And so,
For sure.
so I think it just separates the passion for the game and like your mindset. When you're projecting a level, how much does positional size and matter, or yeah, size matter to you?
Um, so it does matter. It definitely does matter and I say that because, if you are I'll just use this as an example, right? You're a 6'2", uh, shooting guard. You know what I mean? And it's like, okay, so if you went to Memphis or something like that, you're gonna be playing against somebody's gonna be guarding you that's 6'7", 6'8", you know what I mean, 6'5", you know what I mean, and you could be completely overwhelmed just depending on the type of player that you are. So I think positional size does matter, especially in this day and age where every team wants to be as big as they can be. So I think it matters for sure. It's not a be all end all, but it definitely matters. I think you have to be. You got to be special, you know what I mean? Because I take a guy like Antonio Pemberton, you know what I mean, for mass rivals. Um, I think he's 6'1", 6'2", and he's projected to be a point guard or whatever. He just got offered by, I think, Kansas and Michigan and a bunch of schools, and he's going to be high major D1. But he's special. He's a killer.
Well, speaking on that route, like I see a lot of kids like 6'2", 6'1", call themselves combo guards. They might be great scorers in high school, but what kind of attributes do you think they need to show to be a solid point guard in college? Because at 6'2", man, it's hard to be a shooting guard in college when you've got 6'6" guards now. Like that's 4 inches. They got 7 foot wingspans. So you're gonna have to move over to that point guard position, right? So you gotta
Mhm.
what skills do you think you're gonna have to show, like to a high major coach or any coach that they can play that position?
So I think first thing is probably adaptability, man. Can you adapt to change? Because you're not no longer going to be shooting 30 times a game and be a primary scorer. Now you're the distributor. Can you run a team? Can you run a team as the point guard? Like, how well do you lead? I think those are the biggest things, man. Adaptability and leadership. It's like, can you do those things? But all the while, when you're making that switch, and it all depends on role and team design and everything else. Can you still hit a shot or whatever when they need you to or whatever? So it's so many different dynamics that come into this, man, and that's why basketball is one of those sports that's so great because it's like you have to be able to adjust with so many different things, man. Things don't go your way, you got to adjust. When things go your way, you have to adjust. When things just not happening at all, you have to adjust. It's like you have to adjust to everything, man. And so, your role and responsibility, is gonna matter.
I think versatility is really a key. How important do you think versatility is in today's college game?
Oh, it's huge. It's huge nowadays, you know what I mean? Especially because you see, like you got big dudes, you know what I mean, stepping out, shooting the threes and things like that, you know what I mean? And especially on the defensive end, you know what I mean? You have, like we were just talking about it, 6'7", two guard, you know what I'm saying? But he's guarding, 1 through 4, you know what I mean? So he's versatile defender. So versatility, it matters and it definitely makes you more marketable for sure.
Yeah, to being able to guard 3 or 4 positions, like you can stay out on the floor longer. Just depends what
Yeah.
kind of roster you have. Uh, do prospects like need to be able to guard multiple positions, like or play multiple offensive roles? I mean, we kind of talked about being able to if you can do that and being versatile. I don't think you have to be able to do that. Maybe at the guard position, guard the 1 and 2. But what's your thoughts on that? Like being able to guard multiple positions, think you have to do that to play at that level?
I don't think you have to do it, but I think that the more you can do it, the more marketable you become. And it's one of those things that, like, when your number is called, man, and they expect you to fill a role and to do a certain thing, and switch over to a guy, you can't just say, oh, I can't do it. You know what I mean? You got to do it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things that it's like, man, it's no time to, the lip service is out the window. Like, now you have to actually do it. You know what I mean? We don't care about what you think you can and can't do, but can you do it? If you can't do it, you sitting down next to me.
Can you kind of explain the difference between evaluating talent and evaluating fit?
Yeah, so evaluating talent is like that's like a singular thing, you know what I mean? You're evaluating the player, you know what I mean? You're evaluating that player, that guy, um, you know what I mean, to see how they are as a player, and you're evaluating, offensively, defensively, physical attributes, things like that. And as far as evaluating the fit, okay, like if you have a role you need to fill on your team, like like my top scorer left or whatever. So I'm evaluating, Cody to see how he will fit in as a scorer here. So I'm evaluating those things, on you as far as like scoring wise. What do you do well that will translate over into what I need you to do here? You know what I mean? At my school. So I think evaluating fit and evaluating talent is two totally different things. And some it could be the same, but it's a little different too. Like I said, because you're evaluating a player opposed to evaluating a spot you need to fill.
Yeah, like a player can be talented, but it doesn't necessarily mean he fits a certain system,
For
like
sure.
like any kind of offensive system. The Providence system. Like a
Mhm.
lot of teams are doing different things now, but just because you're talented doesn't mean you're going to fit their system. I think that's one of the biggest things like parents and players need to understand, right? Like you might have this dream school that you want to go to, but your talent doesn't necessarily fit their system. So you
For
need to
sure.
you need to locate schools where your talent fits. Like I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest key is finding programs where you can fit and target those before you're just throwing darts everywhere. Like
Absolutely.
yeah, like find schools where your game will fit and target those before you do anything else instead of throwing darts everywhere.
Absolutely.
Um, let's talk about where AAU basketball is today. The current state of grassroots basketball for you. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know you've been doing it for 9. You've seen AAU basketball at every different angle across multiple circuits. Where has the AAU game gone today compared to when you first began scouting?
Um, I think I mean, obviously, I think this just it's like everything else. Some improvements need to happen and should happen, but overall, I think the game is in a pretty healthy place. You know what I mean? Especially like talent wise. Here in America, I mean, I don't think it gets no better as far as talent wise. It's just I think as a culture, as a basketball culture as a whole, though, like I mean, some things could be better. You know what I mean? I think a lot of this stuff is you got some selfishness out there. I'll say that. You got some selfishness out there. And it's not so much from the kids either. You know what I mean? I think we've kind of shifted away from, how pure the game used to be to now it's like, it's the money aspect that's out there now. So that threw a whole new monkey wrench into everything. And I think you have a lot of people out there, trying to, get as much as they can, and take advantage of players as much as they can so they can get to where they need to be, their bottom line. And so I think that's one of the biggest things that need to change in AAU basketball for sure.
You think AAU basketball has become more focused on exposure than development?
um, I would say yes and no, maybe. I think I think it's a little bit of both. I definitely think it's a little bit of both because you see it, you definitely see the exposure side and the development side. But I think that's more of a, because you see like these shoe companies they have what they got going on, and they it's more about exposure than development on that side. You know what I'm saying? But like, I know some really good people in the game, that's doing it for the right reasons and they're focused on development. So I would say it's a little bit of both.
Yeah, I know one thing. Like with Nike, like they caught some. I use the kids call it flack. Maybe I don't know if they call that anymore, but like their banners hanging down at the Pizza Jam.
Yeah. Yeah, I
You
saw
know,
that. I went there
yeah,
last Saturday and I saw that. I was like, oh wow. I was like, oh okay. I was like, that's interesting. I mean, and it's all good. You know what I mean? If that's, they're trying to, promote a brand. So I get it. You know what I'm saying? I totally get it from a marketing standpoint, but the optics on it look kind of crazy for sure.
do you think the balance between winning, development, and exposure has become distorted?
Say that one more time. I'm sorry.
Do you believe the balance between winning, development, exposure has like become distorted?
The balance between winning and develop. Yeah, yeah. I think the focus on winning isn't as strong as it used to be for sure. It definitely isn't as strong as it used to be. I think that we need to get back to the essence of that. But at the same time, it's youth competition, so it's like it's one of those things where it's gonna be what it is, man. Like it's up to us as the adults and as the parents, you know what I mean, and the player, not the players, but the coaches and everything, and the companies to really drive that home. I think we need to do a better job at that. But like, what is this all about, though? Like, you gotta think about it. What is the game all about? Is it about winning, or is it about, development, getting ahead? What is it about? It should be about like the development of the kid and the betterment of the kid. But like I said earlier, you know, the game has changed so much that it seems like the money aspect of it is just just running rampant and just taking over.
I think that's I think that's a correlation from NIL, man. I really
For
think
sure.
it's become a business. Everything's become a business, and there's more teams like the tournaments, showcases, all those circuits are using social media like more than ever before. Like, has that you think that has created more opportunities for players, or has it made the entire process more confusing for players?
I think it's gotten confusing, but I do think it has given, a lot of players a lot more opportunities. You know what I'm saying? At certain things, is giving them, a lot more, many more options. You know what I mean, to do some things and to get creative with some things. So I think it's, I think it's a good and a bad thing, but it's all about um, how you roll it all out, man, and how it's all about individual stuff. Because I feel like with all that, it should come with some kind of education. You know what I mean? I felt like it was no education to it. It's like, here you go, you know what I'm saying? And to just do what you got to do. And that's why you see, players doing some crazy stuff that they doing. And, that's just what happens.
Yeah, I had that. I think it's all about having to market yourself. Like I
Yeah.
tell kids that, if you're not a 4 or 5 star player, there's at least 1,000 of you out there. So you're going to have to market yourself. I had a conversation before the podcast with a parent about, keeping yourself fresh out there for coaches, to be able to see, to be able to market yourself. So I kind of, put out a course today on the recruiting masterclass about social media. I think it can be confusing, and you just need to kind of simplify it for these people,
Yeah.
for players and parents. But back to whatever, are players like playing too many games and not practicing enough?
Um, I don't think so. I want to say, but I think that with AAU, right? So just speaking on AAU, not even high school, just speaking on AAU, I think that I don't think that they're. I don't think the time is allotting them to play enough. You know what I'm saying? Because the other thing about it too, right, is if me and you had a team in Kentucky, we probably got players from Tennessee on our team, players from West Virginia. So it's all about can we get them all in the gym at the time to practice? So I think it's just a lot of variables, man, that goes into that, and I think it's all about it. I prefer development. Me personally, I prefer development over playing the games and stuff. But there's things in the game that you can't replicate or duplicate. You know what I mean, without playing the game. So it's nothing wrong with playing a lot of games. You know what I mean. I think you just got to take care of your body.
How much skill development do you think can happen during the middle of a AAU season? Where teams are traveling and playing all those games every weekend. Like, do you think much skill development happens, or is it just like a measuring stick for players to say, "Oh boy, this player's better than me. I need to improve at this," or not this player, but like I need to improve at these skills if I want to get to their level?
Yeah, no, I think skill development can happen in the course of an AAU season. I think you just need to incorporate it into like your practices and stuff like that, and just make time for the. It's all about making time. You know what I mean? If you really truly are, something is important to you, and you're serious about something, you make time for it, right? So, I'm serious about my family, so I make time for my family. So, that's just how it goes, man. You just got to make time for it. Sometimes you got to think outside the box and be creative. It's all about that.
What styles of play are you seeing the most often in AAU or grassroots today?
Um, Definitely fast paced. Just from a team aspect, I'm seeing like a lot of teams fast paced, a lot of 3-point shooting, a lot of shooting threes from big men, and big men bringing the ball up the court and everything. So I think a lot of teams are trying to replicate what they're seeing in the NBA, and it doesn't always translate, but You know, it translated for the Florida Rebels. I'll tell you that on the UIBL circuit. So they did well with it.
Oh, you think teams are playing too fast, relying too heavily on like ISO play, or are they prioritizing offense over defense?
I think some teams might be doing that. Not all teams. I think some teams might be doing that, but that goes, that goes into the coaching. I feel like the coach is the one who needs to identify, what style needs to be played best, and do you have the personnel to play that style? So it's all about coaching.
Are some teams focused on like collecting talented players instead of building like a solid roster?
Oh yeah, for sure. You definitely see that. You definitely see some of that. They just want all the best players they can get. And the funny part about it though is that normally those teams like that, they normally aren't even that good because they don't know how to, you know what I mean, they don't know how to bring that, they don't know how to weave all that in there together to make a good team. So it doesn't always work, but I mean, I get the logic in it.
Yeah, it's a marketing standpoint, right? You got the
Sure.
top names, you're going to be able to market it, but if those
Sure.
kids can't play together, it's not going to work out. So what do you
Exactly.
think truly makes a good? What do you think truly makes a good AAU program?
I think what makes a good AAU program is obviously having a good director. And I think having, I mean, the right people around your kids, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, I had to move from over there. I had to charge my phone. But I think having, like I said, having a good director, having the right type of people around your kids, and being able to, have that direct line to coaches and get your kids seen as much as possible. You know what I mean? And then to put them in the right position to get seen as much as possible. So I think that's part of it. And having kids in your program that have high character. You know what I'm saying? Good character and high character kids, selfless kids, kids that actually want to be there for the right reason, but also coaches and having the staff and the coaches that want to be there for the right reason and they want to be there for the kids.
Yeah, I think like honest communication, being able to
Sure.
place their athletes in college, player development, and the relationships is so huge in recruiting, man. I think building those solid relationships. What are some red flags that families should look for when choosing like an AAU program? You think?
Um, I think you know what I mean? I think like you said, like looking at the development side, right? Um, I think you should measure, how much better is your kid getting, you know what I mean, with me taking them to this practice that's 2 hours away or whatever the case may be, how much better is my kid getting in 90-day increments or something like that, just taking 90-day increments and like if you're really involved as a parent as like I was when my kids were playing, I wanted to see like how much better did my son get after these 3 months or 90 days or whatever or after this tournament or I've noticed he's been working on something I mean for however minutes time like how does that translate to the game and did it translate to the game and so that's one thing I think you could look for is just the developmental piece of it I think
I
you
think
know
some are like realistic, like promises, like constantly changing rosters, man. That's a huge red flag, right?
Oh my God, yes, yes, yes. It definitely you have a revolving door and just kids in and out, in and out, in and out. I mean, it can happen to your kid, so it's like it's one of those things to look for sure. But I think definitely, you know, having that relationship with the coaching staff, you should be able to know what kind of people you got around your kids for sure.
Exactly. Yeah, that's definitely one. Like I said, that poor communication, and no clear role for your child, man. Like you should know what role they have for your kid. I think that's a
Sure.
huge red flag. If they don't know the role for your kid, then that's probably not the program for you.
Yep.
Um, how important is it choosing the right role compared to choosing the highest, biggest program name?
Say
I
that one
think
more
it's
time.
so. How important is it for choosing a role instead of compared to choosing like one of the biggest AAU program names?
I think it's huge, man. I mean, because like it doesn't make any sense for you to go play for, you know, Wildcat Select, and you're not going to get any minutes whatsoever. You know what I mean? It doesn't. doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Opposed to playing for another team on a 3SSB who got plenty of time for you to play and you develop there. So I think that's a big thing. You know what I mean? But I think kids get caught up in that, and that's why during AAU season, like the second week, you always generally see like on Twitter you'll see those kind of tweets go around like, oh yeah, little bro is cool with playing for whatever team X. You know what I'm saying? He got the shoes and the bags, but he ain't even getting in the game. You know what I mean? So it's huge, man. Like it's not gonna do anything for you if you just sitting on the bench, bro. So if you and that's what development is, right? It's having a real role and responsibility while playing some minutes. You can't if that's not the case, you're it's pointless. You know what I'm saying? It's pointless.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's more valuable to, get more minutes on a smaller program,
For
or
sure.
instead of sit behind some nationally ranked player on a shoe circuit.
For sure.
But at the same time, it's all about that. I think these kids are being told you have to market yourself, and you're like, oh, if I'm playing on this big shoe circuit, like my name's gonna be more marketable than if I'm winning on this smaller circuit or program, right?
Yeah, that ain't always the case though.
No, no. So let's talk about like shoe circuits and independent programs. They receive a lot of attention. Like how much does it matter like playing on the EYBL, the 3SSB, Pro 16? How much does that really help how does that help a prospect?
So, like I said, it can only help you if you have a real role and responsibility on the team while playing some minutes. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? So, like playing on those circuits are only important if you are actually playing. You know what I'm saying? Because I don't think Kentucky or Duke is going to give me or Cody a scholarship offer if they don't see me play, but I'm on the team. You know what I'm saying? Like it doesn't matter. You know what I mean? That's why I say circuit doesn't matter if you're not playing, but if you're playing and you can show that you can compete and match up with these guys and sometimes win some battles against some top kids, it's important. You know what I mean? But that doesn't have to be everybody's case. You know what I mean? There's a lot of there's a lot of independent teams or independent circuits that just do their thing and their kids end up fine as well. So it just depends, man. It's all situational.
So here's the big question. Do you think playing on a shoe circuit automatically makes someone a D1 prospect?
Hell no. No. No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because just and that's the thing too, man, is because you can play, right? You can even have a role and responsibility on a team, right? But you also have to play well. You know what I'm saying? Or to you have to show that you can compete and that you belong, right? Because if you don't, it could go the other way for you too. You know what I mean? So it don't even matter.
So what do you think independent programs, should do to ensure college coaches and scouts know about their players?
I think they got to do the legwork. You know what I mean? Just develop your kids to the highest level you could develop them at, and I think a big thing is like just making those relationships, man, making those relationships. And the thing is too is that if you have a kid that is at a higher level than everybody else and you just holding on to them because you want to win games, that's ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Talk to these other programs that might be able to help him that have more resources and get him on a better team. It's nothing wrong with that, but I think we live in an era, man, that we're selfish and we want to keep what we got and guard what we have. So we tend to just hold on to things instead of just letting it go and just saying, hey, go be great over here. But that's one of those
Or,
things, man.
or you think there's situations where a player can actually get overlooked on a loaded shoe circuit team or roster?
Oh, it happens all the time. It happens all the time. All the time. Like shit. This past weekend, talking to a coach, he's looking at a certain player and he's like, this player hasn't done anything. And I'm like, well, how long has he been on that team? Well, this is first weekend on the team. And I'm like, okay. And they got three or four other guys that are pretty much doing everything. And so, they start to rethink their evaluation. And I'm just like, that's not really necessary because he could play. You wouldn't be out here to watch him if he couldn't play. It's just that he's just on the wrong team. And that happens sometimes. So I get it.
How much is role clarity? How important is role clarity on a talented roster? You know, a player might average 6 or 7 points, but could still like show college level, ball through defense, passing, shooting, or rebounding.
Yeah, I think role clarity is important in anything that you do, you know what I'm saying? But basketball is very important because I mean it makes no sense to be out there and you don't even know what's going on, or the coach told you, hey, I need you to be the anchor on defense, but then you're out there, not doing that, or they have you doing something else, and you don't, or you just don't even know what your role is. You just kind of out there running around and trying to do the best you can, and that's just, I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, I talked to a player and his parents. Peach Jam. He scored 26 points. Next game, he had 4 points, 5 rebounds, and facilitated well. He got more contact from that 4 point, 5 rebound, good passing game. He's a point guard. He got more
Hmm.
contact from that game than he did from his 26-point game down to Peach Jam. So that
Yeah.
right there just tells you like what's important to coaches. From a scouting perspective, do you adjust like expectations based on a player's role and the level of competition?
Oh, for sure, definitely, 100%, 100%. Because when you're evaluating, you know, if I know that player X is 6'11", right, but a kid is 5'10" guarding him, I'm like, okay, what I'm saying? I know what should happen, you know what I mean, opposed to what's actually going to happen, you know what I mean? Like, and it's one of those things that you have to adjust, what I'm saying, expectations sometimes, especially depending on the setting, what the kid is playing, and depend on what situation that they're in as well, so definitely.
This is a big one. Social media highlights and rankings. Like social media has completely changed like the grassroots basketball AAU.
Hmm.
What's the positives of players being able to build their own platforms?
I definitely think the marketing part is good, you know what I'm saying? And then, like, sometimes you have players out there coming up with their own highlight films, or they're able to market themselves and reach directly to coaches, as opposed to where you couldn't do that back in the day because there was no social media or whatever. So, just being a player, being able to do a lot of things for themselves is just better. You know what I'm saying? And I think that's the biggest thing that's happening now.
What about some negatives?
Um, Negatives is, what a player could put online that could really, just be crazy, because we live in a crazy world right now, man. And it's like, one tweet could ruin you for a decade. You know what I mean? Depending on what the content of the tweet is. So, it's one of those things that you got to be careful with.
I think one of the biggest negatives is spending too much time on social media instead of in the gym. Like
Yeah, that
actually
too.
developing or posting, posting every single highlight or posting on like offers or heck, even posting your highlights before like as soon as the game's over, you lost. You want to just post your highlights instead of like processing like what you've done wrong, watching film. Like you
Yeah.
got to like get the flash out there, and I think that's the culture we're in these days. So,
Yeah,
um,
for sure. I think
do you
another
think
thing
there's
too is let me just touch on that real quick. I think another thing too, man, is spending a lot of time on social media and then start comparing yourselves to
yeah.
everybody else. And it's kind of like the comparison thing, and it's like, you analyze that so much that, or you wonder why. Oh, I'm better than that kid. He got a Kansas offer, he got a Duke offer. I'm better than that kid. And it could really play a role, you know what I'm saying, into, some of these kids' mental health. So I think that's a part of it too.
Yeah, I think the biggest advice to these kids is run your own race. Like you have to run your own race and not worry about somebody else compare yourself. But I think that's another thing about our culture is always, with social media, you can see everybody else's race now. And I think that's like you talk about the mental health aspect, being able to focus on your own race instead of someone else's. You know, do you think like there's people like the viral highlights instead of making winning plays?
Do I think what?
Sorry, someone was calling. It was like pausing this. Are there too many like players chasing viral clips, highlights, instead of like making winning plays that you see now?
Yeah, I think that's part of a downside of social media too. You do see, you know, viral highlights instead of winning plays, because, nobody wants to see a winning play. unless it's like a shot being made or something. You know what I mean? But they don't see that winning play that was, the big kid who set the screen, who got the guy loose to get the shot open or whatever, the open shot or whatever. So I think it's a lot of that. Um, and that's just the era that we live in, man. Like it's self promotion, man, and that's a huge thing right now, and it's terrible.
Yeah, let's talk. Let's talk about rankings real quick. How difficult is it actually to like rate rank players? At younger ages, man. I think it's like almost impossible. But man, I seen on Instagram the other day someone had class of 2035 rankings. It was like first grade kids. Like, yeah,
That's to me, that's just ridiculous. And
too
I've
much.
never
That's too
I've
much.
never been involved in any rankings, so I don't know. But I think, like I said, I think it's hard to do, especially if you haven't seen every kid that you're ranking, and or you haven't seen them compete against a kid that you're ranking them compared to. You know what I'm saying? Or ranking them against. So I don't know, man. I just don't know how I don't know how that works. And I think that they're subjective. So you can say, oh, this player is better than that player, but are they really? Do we really know that? You know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah, I think rankings sometimes reward exposure over like actual performance, right?
Oh, for sure.
And the big question, man, for you, like, how much should families care about rankings?
Way too much. You know what I'm saying?
They
I would say
shouldn't
they
care.
care. They shouldn't care about that at all. You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, I think that's why people, a lot of, no, not everybody, but that's why a lot of people do it is, you know what I mean? Because they want the self gratification and all that. So, and they know it's the families that push for that a lot of times. So that's what they go with. But I don't know, man. I think that they care about it too much, to be honest with you.
Can rankings like negatively affect the player's development by creating pressure and entitlement? That's definitely for
Sure.
sure.
For sure. For sure it can. I think it definitely can, man. For sure. I think, you spend too much time worrying about where you rank instead of getting that jump shot right or that handle tight. It could really, have an adverse effect on your game.
Let's talk about parents real quick. They play a major role in a young athlete's journey. Like,
Hmm.
what do you see parents doing well in today's AAU environment?
I love to see parents at the games, man, because I feel like the support of a parent is what a kid needs. And I'm a guy who I grew up with both parents. My life, my whole life. So it always was big when they were at my games and stuff. It makes you feel good. And, you feel loved, and you go out there and you're able to compete without too much pressure. You know what I mean? Unless your parents are putting that pressure on you. But I think that's just a good thing, man. I think parents are showing up, and I think that's great. I love that.
What do you think some of the biggest mistakes they make?
Obviously, just being a little too boisterous on the sidelines and stuff. I think that's one of the things that can, you know, either too boisterous on the sidelines or online, what I'm saying, is where, you could, kind of hurt your kid or whatever. So I think parents need to they just need to pay attention to what they say and do because, coaches are evaluating the parents as well.
Yeah, that like, how should parents communicate with the AAU coach about their
Hmm.
child's role? Like, what's your thoughts
Yeah.
on that?
So how do they say that one more time?
How should parents communicate with their AAU coach about their kid's role?
Oh, I don't think a parent should communicate with a coach about the player's role. I don't think they should communicate with them at all about that. Unless they know for a fact that there's some nefarious things going on or some wrongdoing going on. Then other than that, man, I don't think that it should be any communication about it. To be honest with you, like I said, unless they feel like not even it's not about what they feel. If they know and can prove, like, hey, my kid is Cody's being done wrong because I know that Cody's, friend's dad paid them money to play him over him. If they can prove that, then that needs to be discussed. But other than that, man, I wouldn't even worry about discussing it. I don't even think it should be a conversation.
You think parents should contact coaches and scouts directly?
Um, I am one to believe that. So I talk to a lot of parents. I do talk to a lot of parents because I think when the way I build relationships through the parents. You know what I'm saying? Because I always want to show them that respect. Because if I am covering their kid, you know what I mean? Like I want them to know that, hey, this is how I feel about your kid. I don't want nothing from you, or whatever the case may be. So I don't think there's nothing wrong with players contacting scouts. Now, when it comes to coaches, I think that's an individual thing, man. I think it's all situational. I think there are times that they probably should and can contact a coach, but I think a lot of times, man, that's probably just, you know, because generally when a coaching department is contacting a kid to offer or whatever, they'll talk to the parents anyway, and that relationship is going to be built. So if they build up a relationship that they feel comfortable, that that they can communicate with the coaching staff with, that's fine, But I wouldn't say like first contact shouldn't be like that. I don't know.
How can parents promote their child without being overbearing or creating a negative reputation?
So social media, man, use social media. You know what I mean, and spread your kid's name as much as possible and be proud about it. I think it's a kind of a negative connotation on that. That like if you promote your kid and your kid only, that that you're selfish or the kid might be selfish or whatever. I don't believe that. You know what I mean? I'm in a thought process of like, hey, promote your kid. It's perfectly fine to promote your kid. You know what I mean? Because at a lot of times, man, if you're not doing it, who's doing it? You know what I'm saying? If your kid ain't, you know, don't have a 247 profile or something, who's gonna promote your kid? So yeah, do the work, do it. There's nothing wrong with that. Be proud about it. I have no problem with that at all.
Let's hit this last segment, man. College basketball recruiting has changed with the transfer portal, the NIL, revenue sharing, the new eligibility rules, like the rosters. Like, how have those changes affected high school recruiting for you?
Um, Obviously, I think like for like 2027 class or 2026 class, coaches, they are going to the transfer portal and stuff, more than they are, like I think the top of the top are the ones getting recruited the hardest. And then, after that, like once they're all gone, I think you'll see coaches kind of scale back and just go to the transfer portal because they want to get a player that can help them right away, a player that's, more developed, that's been in the college game longer, because ultimately it's about saving their jobs. So
Yep.
who's gonna help me? Who's gonna help me win games? This freshman, that's number 96 in the rankings, or this guy I could get out of the portal who averaged 17 at a high major, and he's played 2 years of college basketball so far. So
Yeah, and
it's one of those things.
it's
Oh,
also
go
about
ahead.
showing how they can handle academics, the travel,
Sure,
like they're more
sure,
physically developed,
for
and
sure.
and they can contribute like immediately because a high school player, like they need to be able to contribute immediately, and most of them can't because they're not physically developed. Um,
Yeah,
and you think more players are accepting offers based on the name of the school instead of like the role, the opportunity, and the development plan?
yeah, I think that's definitely happening, and that's unfortunate, because at the end of the day, the name of the school shouldn't matter. Like I said before, what I'm saying? Like if you got a chance to play college basketball at the next level, at any level, really, it's like it's higher than high school. So you're going to the next level, right? Technically. So I mean, you should take that opportunity and do the best you can, and let the chips fall where they may. You know what I mean? Sometimes, everybody's high major isn't in everybody's calling card. You know what I'm saying? D1 isn't in everybody's calling card. Sometimes it's not going to happen for you. You got to accept that, and you just got to, be a star in your role, and just whatever level you fall on, just kill it. Do the best you can.
What should a player prospect ask a college coaching staff before they commit?
I think, you know, having an honest conversation with a coach, I think, some of the things you can ask a coach is just, I think a lot of people default to, hey, what's my role or whatever, because a lot of times when these colleges recruiting you, they tell you how they feel that you fit in and everything. I think, it's like a job interview, you know what I mean? You're asking them, like, okay, so what does success look like to you? You know what I'm saying? How do you think I could be successful in that role that you're recruiting me for? You know what I mean? Like who else are you recruiting somebody else in the same similar role? Are you telling different prospects the same things, you know what I mean? Or is this your pitch? Is it tailored to me? Is it the same pitch that you're giving Cody and Cody's brother and then my brother and everybody else? Are we just getting the same thing? Or it's just one of those things where it's like I said, it's a job interview, man. So it's kind of situational where you could sit down and just really just come up with some thoughtful questions to ask,
Yeah.
and just go with that. You know.
Yeah, I mean, like with like the recruiting, like the transfer portal, like you could ask them, like, are you in the port? Like, what players you were going to recruit in the portal? Your development
Hmm.
plan. What happens if the head coach leaves? Is there
Yeah.
academic support available? And the biggest one, what is the NIL situation? And then the last one, is the scholarship even guaranteed?
Yeah.
So like, there's one school in Kentucky, man, like uh, they won't offer you unless you commit. They like give you 2 weeks, so it's almost like an ultimatum. It's a little different thing, but
Yeah. That's
like
crazy.
how important? Yeah, how important is academic performance in recruiting to you?
I think academics is important just due to you want to make sure that the kid can handle, what I'm saying, the load, the academic requirements and the academic load that's going to be put on him, in college, especially with, travel and all that other stuff, what I mean? Like how disciplined are they to get their work done and everything? You want to make sure that that's not going to be an issue, you know what I'm saying, when you're recruiting a kid for sure.
What's some of the biggest mistake players make during the recruiting process?
I think some of the biggest mistakes that kids make is like not being accessible to coaches, and the coaches not being able to reach them, or them not getting back to the coaches. Um, uh, Maybe even while going on visits, just crazy behavior, just things like that, man. Nothing too crazy, but I think one of the biggest things is just communication.
What about parents during the recruiting
Yes.
process?
um Probably just being overbearing, being overbearing, not being communicative to, what I mean, with the coaching staff as well, and just making maybe even making demands, what I mean. I think that's definitely a mistake.
Yeah, man. Let's hit some rapid fire and then get up out of here, man.
All right.
Current production over or long term upside.
I would say production.
Skill or athleticism.
Skill.
Full game film or highlights.
Full game film.
Yes, sir. High school basketball or AAU.
I think it depends on where you're at.
Shoe circuit or independent circuit.
Situational.
Man to man or zone.
Man up.
First, pass first point guard or scoring point guard.
Pass first.
Elite shooter or elite defender.
Elite defender.
Best trade a prospect can have.
Best trade a prospect can have. Leadership.
Most underrated skill in basketball.
Screen setting.
Most overrated stat.
Scoring.
Hardest position to evaluate.
Small forward.
Hardest age group to evaluate.
Anything under eighth grade.
Favorite type of player to scout.
A leader. A, a good teammate. A good character kid. Um, and a fundamentally sound kid.
Your favorite event atmosphere.
AAU. Anything AAU is cool.
Notebook or phone notes.
Notes.
One-on-one workout or like film game evaluation.
One-on-one workouts.
Man, before we hop out of here, what is next for you?
Um, Next for me, I think I'm just trying to line up a couple more events in August that I want to go to. I know they got but some of the events they don't fit my timeline because I'm going on family vacation next month to Disneyland in Orlando. So it's an Under Armour event that they wanted me to be at. There's a couple camps next month. I know they got the Wooten 150 that's going to be in Vegas, and they have the Crossroad Elites camp that's going to be in Kansas City. So I'm definitely going to try to go to one of those three, maybe all three. But like I said, if my timeline matches up, which is not, but so we'll see what happens. I'm just gonna, like I said, I'm just gonna keep my head down, man, and just keep grinding, just work for myself, man, and just do the best I can, man, and trying to, evaluate talent as much as possible and just put out articles and just show as much love as I can to the kids.
So where can people follow you, connect with you, and keep up with your scouting work?
On my Substack. So on my Substack, they definitely can check me out on Substack. I think the link is definitely will be in this interview. So just follow me, follow my Twitter at Scout P Kong. I have Instagram and all of that. So and I think all three of those links are on my Substack as well. So yeah, they can follow me there. That's where I do majority of my writing.
Yeah, I'll make sure I get them out when I get this episode out and order the clips.
Okay.
Man, Pablo, thank you so much for like taking your time to join me this afternoon. I think it was a really great conversation about like AU basketball, how it's changing, like recruiting and scouting. You know, you spent the time in the gym evaluating talent. Your journey with Made Hoops and Puma, Next Pro. I think that just gives you your credibility. To everybody watching, make sure you follow Pablo on Substack. Support the work he's doing. As an independent basketball scout. To everyone watching and listening, make sure you subscribe to Pure Prospects podcast on YouTube or here on Substack. Follow Pure Prospects on Instagram and X at pure_prospects. You can follow us on Facebook for recruiting news, uh, interviews, podcasts, evals, scouting coverage, and recruiting education. Leave a comment and tell us your biggest takeaway from this conversation. I'm your host, Cody Thomas, and this has been another episode of the Pure Prospects podcast. We'll see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me, Pablo.
Appreciate it, Cody. Thanks for
Been
having
a
me, brother.
great podcast, my man.
Yes, sir.